September 1st, 2015. A day every Metal Gear fan will remember. It is the day Metal Gear Solid V The Phantom Pain was released. Guys, I'm afraid it's been 9 years, and honestly, I don't know what's scarier, how fast time flies, or the fact it's been 9 years since the last time we got a proper Metal Gear game. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I took a week off from work just like I always do when a new Metal Gear game comes out. I managed to grab a copy of the game early, went home, turned my PlayStation 4, and start playing what would become Hideo Kojima's last Metal Gear game, his final masterpiece. I was blown away by everything. The prologue, the graphics, the cutscenes, the gameplay, the music. It was Kojima at his peak in terms of gameplay and storytelling. I kept playing and playing, completing every mission, every task, finishing side ops, and recruiting soldiers. I played all day and not all night, have a night. But midway through, I started noticing some issues. At first, I brushed them off because the gameplay was so addictive. It's a huge game after all. I was willing to overlook these problems. However, as I played more, the issues start piling up. I noticed odd pacing and strange story developments. Still, I kept going, believing there had to be an explanation. This was a Hideo Kojima game. I couldn't believe who would make these weird mistakes. But things only got weirder. I became more and more confused by what was happening. And then, out of nowhere, the credits rolled. The game was over. Or rather, it stopped. What just happened? Did I seriously finish the game? Did I miss something? Did I accidentally get a bad ending? There is no way this was supposed to be the end. This couldn't possibly be how Hideo Kojima intended to end his journey with the series. I couldn't sleep that night. I jumped on the internet, scouring gaming forums and Twitter, desperate to find some explanation for what I had just experienced. To my surprise, everyone was complaining about the ending. Was there even an ending? Then, someone posted a video about an episode that was not included in the game. Episode 51, Kingdom of the Flies. I watched it, confused as to why it hadn't been part of the game. It was a crucial part of the story. For some reason, Konami decided to include it as a video in the collector editions instead. Soon, people start digging up old interviews with Hideo Kojima, detailing how he wanted the game to turn out. And that's when we realized Metal Gear Solid V The Phantom Pain was released in an unfinished state. In a previous interview, Hideo Kojima mentioned that the gameplay was the core focus of The Phantom Pain, and the story was designed to fade over time, contributing to the overall feeling of loss or phantom pain in the experience. While he has not explicitly stated that the game was unfinished, he did suggest in an interview that the game was complete in the sense that it delivered the experience he intended. He emphasized the idea of phantom pain where something is missing but still felt, implying that certain narrative gaps or unresolved plot points were intentional, contributing to the game's theme of loss and ambiguity. I'm sorry, but that's a load of bull. The game was clearly unfinished. You can easily see it with your own eyes if you pay attention. It is so incomplete that it is laughable. So many features were cut and altered. Sorry, Mr. Kojima, but I'm not buying it this time. Here are 9 reasons why The Phantom Pain is incomplete. Reason number 1. Episode 51, Kingdom of the Flies. This is probably the most famous example of the game's unfinished state. Kingdom of the Flies continues the story of Eli and his group of child soldiers, who steal Sahelanthropus and flee to an island in Central Africa. Miller tracks their location and sends Venom Snake to retrieve Sahelanthropus and confront Eli. A final confrontation takes place between Venom Snake and Eli, where Sahelanthropus is ultimately destroyed. Eli, refusing to back down, remains defiant, and with the help of Child Psycho Mantis, he escapes the island before it's purged with napalm. This episode is crucial to the franchise as the events sets the stage for Eli's evolution into the series' iconic villain, Liquid Snake. It also showcases Eli's growing hatred for Big Boss, his rebellious nature, and his desire to overthrow those in power. The importance of this episode is very clear. So, why did Konami cut it? Or better yet, why did they include it in a video format in the collector's edition instead of it being a playable part of the game? The answer is simple. The game was unfinished. Konami knew how important the episode was, so they included it as a video to at least provide some closure to Eli's story in the Phantom Pain. Some people speculate that episode 51 was meant to be part of a future DLC. Okay, fair, but that doesn't change the fact that such an important episode, lore-wise, was cut from the game, making episode 51 one of the clearest and the most debated example of the Phantom Pain's incomplete state. Reason number 2. Camp Omega. In an interview with Jeff Keighley, Kojima mentioned the following. People who owns Ground Zeroes will be able to play different missions at Camp Omega in the Phantom Pain. That's the current plan. There is something of a big feature involved. It's never been done in the gaming industry before. So I can't go into details about it, but I think when you experience it for yourself, you will be surprised. It is something that's only possible through video games. Yeah. What happened to that? According to data miners, unused assets and mission outlines suggest that Camp Omega was indeed supposed to be revisited in the Phantom Pain. This mission would likely have tied back to the events of Ground Zeroes and possibly explored Paz's fate even further. Reason number 3. Abandoned storylines. Characters like Skullface, a major villain in Chapter 1, are dealt with abruptly, and his motivations and plans are never fully explored. The same thing happens with Quiet. Her storylines ends in an emotional but rushed conclusion without much of a follow-up. Reason number 4. Chapter 2. Many people wonder how to unlock Chapter 3 with fans clamoring for Konami to release it. But here's the thing. How can Konami unlock Chapter 3 if Chapter 2 itself is incomplete? Unlike Chapter 1, many missions in Chapter 2 are merely harder versions of earlier missions with added difficulty modifiers. The story missions in Chapter 2 also seems less polished and disconnected, which makes me believe that these repetitive missions were meant to be actual story missions but were replaced due to Kojima's conflict with Konami and time constraints. Reason number 5. Episode 46, The Truth, is incomplete. Okay, this is just my own theory, but hear me out. I have this feeling that the real episode 46 was meant to be different from what we experienced in the game. I mean, think about it. Why would Kojima make you replay the entire prologue with no changes except for small tidbits in the initial and the final cutscenes? I suspect that episode 46 was intended to be played without Ishmael's presence, meaning you would navigate the entire hospital section alone, unlike in the prologue where his guidance was crucial. I mean, take a look at this part. Why isn't he shooting the soldier? You wait for him to take the shot, but he doesn't. In the end, Venom, shoots the other soldier instead. What I'm about to say is part of a larger theory, and I plan to discuss this in a separate video, but here's a teaser. I think Ishmael is an illusion. He doesn't actually exist. You were meant to complete the entire episode alone, even though the game suggests otherwise, such as in the ambulance section and the final cutscene. But as I mentioned, I will explain in more details, hopefully in a future video. Reason number 6. Cooperative play. I was hesitant to talk about this, but I could swear that there was an interview with Hideo Kojima before the release of Ground Zeroes, where he was asked about cooperative play similar to Peace Walker. Kojima responded that it wouldn't be featured in Ground Zeroes, but it will be in the Phantom Pain. I've been searching everywhere in the internet for this interview, because I really remember that interview well. But I can't seem to pinpoint who did the interview, leading me to question whether I'm experiencing some kind of a Mandela effect about this. Anyway, assuming it is true, I mean, Peace Walker had it, why not the Phantom Pain? It is an open world game, and cooperative play would have been a significant addition. It could be part of the buddy system, and instead of relying on D-Dog or Quiet, you will be able to rely on your friends to help you finish difficult missions and tasks. It makes so much sense to have cooperative play in the Phantom Pain, especially since you can play with any of your soldiers from Diamond Dog's base, exactly like Peace Walker, which makes it weird to not have such a feature in the game. But like I said, I don't know if such a feature was announced after all, so let's keep it at that. Reason number 7. Platform-specific content. Remember how Ground Zeroes had platform-specific missions like Deja Vu for PlayStation and Jamie Fu for Xbox? It seems something similar was planned for the Phantom Pain. I mean, check this out.
Enemies and keep them distracted as we sneak away. These are just a few examples of the many new things you can do with the cardboard box, but we don't want to ruin all of the surprises just yet. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Well, I don't know if the content shown here was strictly promotional and are not meant to be in the final product, but I will let you make the decision for that. Reason number 8. Guard dogs. There were dialogues in the game suggest the presence of guard dogs, yet none appear in the game, despite various wild animals and dogs that will attack you if provoked. This suggests Kojima intended for guard dogs to patrol areas, but removed them for unknown reasons. Given that wild dogs exist, the AI for guard dogs likely wouldn't have been radically different. Reason number 9. Battle Gear. Before we talk about this, I know that Battle Gear was intentionally removed from the game by Kojima, as its presence disrupted the gameplay balance, which makes me wonder, if Kojima had more time, perhaps he could find a way to balance it. It is disappointing we couldn't use Battle Gear in the game. It was meant to be your personal Metal Gear in the field, customizable like Metal Gear Zeke. Imagine something akin to Metal Gear Rex from Metal Gear Solid 4 combined with the open world of the Phantom Pain. That would have been amazing. And maybe you can do the same thing with Sahelanthropus. But unfortunately, Battle Gear can only be used by your soldiers during combat deployments. There are other minor pieces of evidence pointing to the unfinished state of the Phantom Pain, but the one I have mentioned have the most impact in my opinion. In the end, cut content in video games and movies is not new, and Kojima is no stranger to it. He mentioned multiple times in various interviews that only about 60% of his ideas make it into his games. However, the same cannot be said for the Phantom Pain. This doesn't seem like cut content. It feels like Kojima's complete vision for the game was compromised. I believe Kojima did not intend for the Phantom Pain to be released in such a state. He mentioned in an interview that Metal Gear Solid V, the Phantom Pain, was the Metal Gear game he always wanted to make, thanks to the evolution of video game hardware and the robust, powerful engine he created, the Fox engine. He would finally realize his dreams. I am sure that in a different timeline, Kojima was able to release the Phantom Pain as he envisioned it. In that timeline, the game would have won multiple Game of the Year awards and been hailed as one of the greatest video games in history. But in our timeline, we get this. It is the cursed timeline for the game, the series, and Hideo Kojima. We may never know exactly what happened, but if I had the chance, I would ask Kojima this question. Given your 28-year legacy with the franchise, did you really intend for the Phantom Pain to be released like this? Did you intend to end your journey with the franchise like this? I don't know how Kojima will respond, but something tells me he will say no. And there we have it. 9 years since the release of Metal Gear Solid V, The Phantom Pain, and it's still a game shrouded in controversy. What started as an incredibly immersive experience with cutting-edge gameplay and storytelling quickly became a source of confusion and frustrations for fans when the cracks began to show. From the glaring absence of key content like Episode 51, Kingdom of the Flies, to the abandoned storylines and characters, it became clear that The Phantom Pain was not the complete vision Hideo Kojima had promised. Whether it was cut content at Cam Omega, the lackluster Chapter 2 missions, or features like cooperative play and Battle Gear being scrapped altogether, the game felt unfinished in a way that no one could ignore. Even with Kojima's statement about the story fading away to highlight the gameplay, fans weren't convinced. I wasn't convinced. The game's potential was undeniable, but the missing pieces still haunt the legacy of what could have been Kojima's final magnum opus with Konami. So, was Metal Gear Solid V a victim of corporate pressure and time constraint? Or was it part of Kojima's grand plan that simply didn't land the way he envisioned? Whatever the case, it left a lasting impact on the series and its fan base, and it is a chapter in gaming history that will always feel unfinished. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.